Um, okay, there we go. So welcome to our official first My Lifeline learning for the month of May, because I know last week we were still tagging off on our one-page marketing strategies. So I also hope to get all of those soon. I know I've got some sweet love notes in my inbox, so that's all good. But ideally, we need to know those 4 quadrants or at least areas of our business before we can do our website, right? So that's probably why lots of people get their websites all wrong, because they don't do their groundwork first, and then they jump straight into a website, which then lands up being not quite what it should be in a nice way. So ideally, our website should be based on what our market message media is. And then, of course, our websites will also talk to those very specific people and not about us, right? So that's a very important thing just to note with websites. And I see it all the time, because people launch businesses. First thing they do, they get their logo designed, they get their website ready, they get their social media pages, and then they're ready. And then they're like, hang on, this isn't working. And then what do? We go back to basics and we start all over again, fixing the foundation and then changing the website to talk to a very specific market about a very specific offering. Okay, so I think through the process of the framework that we did, you would have got that clarity. And I can definitely see that coming through on the feedback I've got, also from seeing what Miles has been doing. I definitely see a lot more clarity as to what it is you're actually doing and who you're doing it for. Okay, so that's important to move to the next step, which makes this actually a lot easier, because initially it's like trying to get website content for from a client is like pulling teeth. It's very difficult because the client doesn't really know what they want to say. But now with those 4 frameworks that we've gone through, you'll have a bit more of an idea what you need to say and do. But anyway, we'll work through that now. So just our framework for the next 4 weeks, because fortunately we have 5. So we've lost the one last week due to us just catching up on our one-page marketing strategies. So this week we're going to look at what we need to make our websites great. So it's basically just going to be your checklist, which I'm going to leave with you. And then you can obviously go and review your website versus the checklist. Then next week, we're going to look at good versus bad websites in action. So possibly looking at some website where there's call to actions on the wrong place, or the size of the call to action is wrong, or there's too much text, or the structure's wrong, or there's 404 errors, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so just looking at some good versus bad websites in action, because I know visually most of us have a very personal opinion about what looks pretty and what doesn't. But when you come to a website, it really just kind of is a lot about the flow. Naturally, how the eye works, psychologically, how we translate content. So yeah, we'll look at some good versus bad websites in action. And then week 3, we'll go on to the activity stuff. So where you will do your own website analysis based on the 12 points, and obviously score yourself whether you're going to action it or you're just going to leave it as it is, or if it needs complete attention, whatever. So we're going to then rate our websites on those 12 points. And then the last one, review, is where we are going to prepare our sitemap and homepage. So if you have no website already, you'll basically start week 4 in week 3, and you will prepare your sitemap and your homepage layout. Okay, so specifically what you're going to include, what your heading going to say, what your call to actions are going to be, what information you're going to include. You may not need to have the information completed, but at least just to present your homepage and what your sitemap is going to look like. Okay, so that is for the month of May in a nutshell. If you have any questions, just shout, Miles. Otherwise, I'm just going to go along. Cool.
You can continue.
Okay, so just some stats. I've shared these before, and I just want to share them again so that you understand why websites are so important. 57% of internet users say they won't recommend a business with a poorly designed website. on mobile. Okay, that's when we talk about being responsive. 85% of adults think that a company's website, when viewed on a mobile device, should be as good or better than its desktop website. Very true. 38% of people will stop engaging with the website if the content or layout is unattractive. So even if you think it's important to include all that content, we've just got to make sure that it's got a nice flow, okay? Because remember, people don't want too much detail, but scanning it is important, so it's how we structure the content. 88% of online consumers are less likely to return to a site after a bad experience. I guess that's like any business or product or service when they've had a bad experience. 39% of people will stop engaging with the website if the images won't load or take too long. So that's something we'll also look at next week, because that's very, very important. Depending on who has put your website together, quite often these images are far too big, and that can delay the upload speed of your website. And we'll even share with you what is the ideal upload speed, which may be quite shocking, but it's true. 47% of users expect a maximum of 2 seconds loading time for an average website. It must be instant. I don't have time to wait. And even if it's a graphic loading, because we're not sure what's there. Sometimes we'll slip through on our phone, especially if the header is still loading, we might still go down to the content. But as soon as we start waiting too long, we lose interest. 75% of consumers admit to making judgments on a company's credibility based on their website. Absolutely. Takes 2.6 seconds for a user's eye to land on the area of the website that most influences their first impression. So you have to pull them in within that first bit. And users spend an average of 5.94 seconds looking at the main website's image. Okay, so website images are also quite important. Users spend an average of 5.59 seconds looking at the website's written content. So if you've pulled them in, your upload speed isn't too bad. They're really pulled in by your image, your main image, because now it's hopefully a relevant image to the person that you're dealing with. Then they will start reading your content. Otherwise, they wouldn't even get to the point of reading your content. 70% of small businesses lack those call to actions. Still see so many websites without enough call to actions. If given 15 minutes to consume content, 2/3 of people would rather read something beautifully designed than plain. First impressions are 94% design related. Of course, it's just a general look and feel. But yes, content is important again in terms of structure, which supports that design. And according to Google, 61% of users are unlikely to return to a site on mobile if they had trouble accessing it, and 40% visit a competitor's site instead. And once they've gone to that competitor's site, they may not well come back. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So the question I wanted to ask you today is, why do you have a website? Miles, tell us why you have a website. I don't think, do you even have a website? I'm not sure now.
I have a web address to make excuses of why I don't have a website.
Okay, why would you have a website? What would be your reason for a website?
It's just to deliver information. So if somebody wants to know a bit more about your products, they can get an overview of your products, get a feel. I think that whole sort of good design reputation thing are definitely connected, because I do that myself. You know, I looked for a supplier yesterday, and it was on BNR. So starting with BNR profiles, this is the best looking profile. Open a couple of the sites, and this is the best, most professional looking company, and that was the only lead that I followed.
It's funny,
really, yeah, very much so important.
Okay, so absolutely. So it's important to have a website for that presence. So if someone is looking for something and they don't find a website, then they probably are a little bit like, maybe this guy's not that serious, and then go on to look for somebody else. And or they find your website, your Facebook page, and then your website kind of just gives them that little bit more validation that you you know what you're doing. And also on top of it, if your website obviously tells them what they need to know. So that was a good question there. And you answered, tell them more about my products. That's good. However, remember, we need to talk to them about their problems, and we need to present our products as a solution. So that's the only thing. So that will just come through in our messaging. So typically, my kind of structure with clients' websites is, you know, starting at the top fold is kind of coming on, delivering that unique value proposition quite quickly. So they immediately associate with, because remember, UVP, kind of establishing possibly who's your audience, what it is that you do, what's the promise to them, and what pain do they have. So in one sentence, paragraph, statement, they can quickly associate if this website is for them. So hopefully being the right target market, they would immediately relate to that problem and that person and that promise, and then they'll move on. And then we can further break it down. So then I quite like to take my personas and define my 2 personas on the home page. So depending if you're servicing, say, estate agents or, as you've said before, or corporates, whatever it may be, defining if you want to, or just speaking directly to that audience, not being very generic, okay? Because I think that's where we start losing focus. And then we just hone in on those pain points, and we have a lot of benefit-driven content. And then we have our solutions. So it's almost like we have to present it in such a way that it kind of tells them the whole story. I'll talk a little bit about structure a bit later. But so websites, why do you have a website? Definitely, obviously, to present your product, but it isn't all about you or your business. Well, not entirely, as I say, all the products you sell. Yes, obviously, we're going to have a product section, but that's a page. Like the homepage for me is the most important page of a website. It is about a prospect customer and their needs. So that's where the relevant factor comes in, because we need to communicate how we can help them. Okay, and that's how we can start getting their engagement. And then we need to offer them a solution with proof, preferably, because they don't know you. They barely, well, they may know of you, but they really maybe don't like you. They definitely don't trust you. So we need to kind of just have all these considerations. Okay, so how could we present the needs? Well, sometimes I say it, are you feeling like this? And I list the pain points. Communicating your needs, showing them how you can help them. So giving them options where they can then go break down and look at further insights as to what the offer includes, how long it takes, how much it costs, and then obviously what you're going to deliver. And then with proof, we could say using videos or testimonials as well, case studies, anything like that. So just kind of thinking about the whole picture. So I always kind of say your website is your home. And another one that's coming up more and more and more is definitely answering any questions. So FAQs are becoming very, very important for websites. Having an FAQ page, because people are going to Google asking questions. If you have some of those relevant questions on your website, Google will direct your website to these people. But again, just answering questions, because they are probably in a position that they need your help. And you know this person so well now, so unpack questions. Even if it's not totally relevant to IT or your in specific industry, unpack a whole lot of FAQs that may be relevant to your audience. Okay, so just remember, the website is not all about us. Yes, it's definitely a place for us to position ourselves with our customer in mind. Very important. Okay, so just quickly, a few things you need to know, because I work with a lot of website developers and I work with a lot of clients on their websites. And it seems like we always get stuck when it gets to that point of, okay, we need to update your website. Okay, we need to change the hosting of your website. And then they don't have these details. So I thought, let me include this section for you guys, please. So as a business owner of a website, you should always have access to the logins for your hosting account. Okay, so it's what we would typically call as a cPanel or control panel. Okay, so either you've set up your hosting, which I did for like my first website. I set it up on AfriHost and I've got cPanel details from AfriHost, which is great because I'm the direct link. But in a lot of the cases, companies will let somebody outsource their hosting for them because it's not really where they want to play, and they offer a 99 rand deal or something. So they get someone else to host on their behalf. Please just have access to your panel, C2C panel details, or any logins you have, or know who's hosting it, because if that person falls off the bus, it's a big run around to try and get these details. Okay, so just so that you know who is hosting it and what your details are, and ask either your supplier now, if you know it's AfriHost or Xnilo and you've got the details, great. But please just keep your cPanel or your login details for your hosting handy. Another one is your, sorry?
So it can also be called direct admin.
Yeah, direct admin, anything, just so that you know. So if he fell off the bus and I came in and said, okay, well, we need to get into your website, or we need to change something over, we want to change the host onto our server, we need those details, because otherwise we can't do anything. Okay, yes, there's lots of ways of finding it, and trust me, it takes time, but it's really not necessary if you just get those correct details. Another one is your domain name, because yes, you own your domain name. Yes, it has to be registered once a year. So again, if you, like me, have registered yourself on domain.com, then you get the renewal every year and you pay. Easy. If you haven't done the domain renewal or name registration and someone on your behalf has, that's fine. They'll probably invoice you once a year for your renewal. That's only a month, an annual fee for your domain. But again, just know, do you own it or do they? Because remember, if you're not paying it, or you've changed emails and you're no longer getting the email from domain.com and you haven't paid your domain, they're going to cut your domain off, and then your website's basically going to go dead. So again, just know, do you own your domain name, or have you registered directly yourself? Do they take a debit order off your account every year? Do you pay it? Or have you not paid your domain for years and you don't know who owns it? So just check that. Okay. Another one, just your login details for your WordPress site. Just had a client not long ago and they just lost the login details. And we couldn't actually track it. And long story short, eventually the guy that worked on the website 4 years ago luckily had a backup, or I can't even remember what happened. So we could manage to send them the backed up files. So again, just if you have had somebody develop your WordPress typically site, probably a WordPress site, and you haven't developed it yourself, there'll always be a login and a password, a username and a password, maybe a two authentication. I'm not sure. I know a lot of them do now, but just have those details as well. Okay, so this is different to your hosting. Your hosting is where your website's sitting. Your WordPress login details is where they're physically going to go into the back end and do your backups and your updates and do your changing your text and changing your pictures and all the fancies. Okay, so that's very different to your hosting, but typically you could have one person doing it all, or one person doing the hosting and one person doing the updating. Okay, so these are just some things that I just please have to bring to your attention, because I just took for granted that website people were really doing their job and realized quickly that this is not actually being done properly. And then just lastly, if there are, well, I think there's one more, but if you know, if your website needs to be upgraded, so that's another thing, like you can develop a website for a client, happy days, they move along, they don't do a monthly update, and then 3 years later, they send you a message and they say, oh, sorry, my website's down. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, I don't manage a website. It probably hasn't have its latest updates, because that's what happens to websites that need to be updated. And so things start disappearing and yeah. Okay, so long story short is, when you get your website developed, which I think most of you will, just ask your developer, how does it work? Would they want to do a monthly check-in, bi-monthly, tri-monthly? I mean, I know in some cases they don't always want you have to do a maintenance fee with them, but in most cases they will say, okay, pay me a minimum monthly fee and I'll just make sure that your website's always up to date, and should there be any issues, just let me know, just so they can check. Doesn't need to be updated monthly, but just to have it covered. If you feel you can't do monthly, at least just just have that discussion with them and ask them when, so that you don't 3 years down the line phone them and say, well, your website's not working, because they actually don't owe you anything really. So yes, then they'll go in and could do the updates for you. Okay, so just something else to think about. And then last thing, just knowing exactly what your responsibilities are versus the website developer and the host. Okay, so your responsibilities for your website is to make sure you drive traffic to your website, most importantly, after you've set up all the content and stuff. The web designer is definitely there just to put it together and make it pretty. I don't expect them to be very strategic about it. You need to tell them what your content, I believe you need to tell them what your content needs to say, what your flow of your website needs to be. They can obviously give professional advice in terms of what works best for best practice, no problem. And obviously, hopefully they can do a little bit of SEO optimization on the back for you. And then lastly, your host is purely there for your website to be hosted so that it's sitting in the cloud. Okay, so very different responsibilities. So just make sure you understand what your responsibilities are versus everyone. So just a bit of clarity on that. And I guess that's like website 101, but I had to just get that out there because the last 2 weeks with websites have been very interesting and actually quite annoying, to the point that you would think some basic things like this would have been handed over to the customer so that they would move on smoothly. But because we don't know better, right? Okay, so just some key things to remember. But oh, and lastly, the traffic thing, of course. If you're getting a guy developing your website, please just make sure that he links it up to Google Analytics. I also would have thought that that was a generic standard thing to be done, but apparently you have to ask for it. Okay, so if somebody has set up your website, please ask them, could they link it to Google Analytics for you, just so you have some way of measuring and tracking your traffic. Okay, I think that is all for now then. So this is the most important part, because this is when your actions are going to come into play, and totally up to you. I've obviously shared 13 points with you. I think, sorry, I added a 13th point. But it's totally up to you whether you want to do all of them. Obviously not every single one may be relevant, but I have definitely taken the top 10. I've taken the checklist we did last year. I've taken my own personal experience, and I've kind of consolidated it into what I say a top 13 checklist to make your website great. So if I was you, I would tick every box just to be sure, because then you know you are making your website great. If you are not in a position to check every box at the moment, that's fine, but let's at least use this as our guide. Okay. So number one, who are you and what you do? Tell people on your homepage who you are and what it is you do. Okay, don't be shy to introduce yourself as the business owner of your business, or what your passion is, or what it is you're there to do. Like, just tell the world. Okay, it doesn't have to be right up front. That's fine. I'm not saying it has to be. But quite often it's like I start searching through websites and I'm like, who's behind this? Like, what's the big secret? And I don't want to get to the About Us page to determine that. And sometimes I even get to the About Us page and I don't even see anything. And I still don't know who this is. Okay? The world is open. People want to see as much information as possible, including you, and they want to know who you are and what you do. So like me, if you want to tell a story, let people get to know who you are. Okay. 2, domain name is also important. Remember, it's if you've already got a domain name, fine. But if you haven't, this is a nice opportunity for you because it's your brand. Yes, they do say choose ones that are easy to input into Google. I don't really always listen to that. I rather get a URL that contains, or domain name that contains a keyword. That's more beneficial. But yeah, so domain names are important. So don't make it too airy-fairy that people actually don't even understand what it is neither. Okay, now we start on the flow of the website. So easy to navigate site maps. So that includes drop-down menus, because that helps us understand or read your website quicker. Can't stand websites where they don't have like a drop-down navigation. Like, it just feels staggered for me. Like, I want to be able to preview before I go in. I don't want to have to go in and then view. I want to preview and choose. Okay, so I guess it's a bit like your Netflix menu. Have it all out there for me so then I can pick what I want to go and look at. Okay, so sitemaps are very important. So that's definitely going to be one of our key tasks. Sitemap being the flow of our website. What's our menu going to look like? What are our drop-down menus going to say? Okay. Number 4, easy way to connect and or give contact information. Okay, it shouldn't be difficult again for them to search. Make it easy for them. Also, like I've done at the moment, I've got the WhatsApp button, or you can have a messenger button, or you can have a chat bot. I mean, it's like the options are endless today. So easy ways to connect with you, details, connect buttons, WhatsApp button, chat box, whatever. Okay, so people get onto your page within those first 2.6 seconds they like you, they read your content. They want to just ask you a question. Make it quite easy for them. Instead of going to the contact form, click the contact in the main menu, go to the contact form. Just make it very easy for them to get hold of you. Okay, also remember they might be viewing it on their mobile. So the best place to locate this, as we know, is the top left or right corner of the home page, and repeat on all pages in the footer. Okay, number 5, customer testimonials are a nice way to showcase your work through text or video. Definitely, this isn't going nowhere soon. Quite frankly, now I see a lot more customers doing videos. But obviously if you can't arrange videos, some of them do selfies on their phone, like I've also done. But if you can't, just get written testimonials from clients. What problem did you solve for them? Very, very powerful. You need testimonials on your website. Okay. Use more than one call to actions on the homepage and tell them what you want them to do. Because I often see that as well. I mean, I just looked at a website yesterday for a client and they've got one call to action on their homepage. And I'm like, really? So not that you want your call to actions to be too salesy, don't get me wrong, but you need to structure it strategically as we unpack the content, what you want them to do. And also more strategically lately, they don't like you to say, click here, download here now, they actually recommend that your call to action should be part of the text. So typically you would say, get a version of our brochure here. You would probably link brochure. Okay, so they're just kind of saying, don't make these call to actions say click here, like we used to do. So just kind of making your call to actions part of the sentence. But yeah, call to actions, very important. I guess that's just as important as linking content between pages. Okay, definitely important for on-page SEO. Talking about SEO, I know we're not SEO experts, but we can most definitely now, with sound advice that we've established in our 4 quadrants, keywords, using some of those keywords when writing our content. Whether it was based on our research, whether it's based on our customer pain points, our offering, our solutions, using some very keywords. So typically putting yourself in your audience's shoes. What would they Google for? What would they ask Google to please help them with? Okay, some of those are some of the great keywords you need to put and include in your content. And you don't need to put it in, hundreds of times like they often say. Just kind of cut and repeat a few of those. That's all. It's just a bit of repetition. So you could quite easily just manage your own SEO. I say that with a very open heart, but my point being is, if you understand your audience so well and what it is that they're trying to achieve with going to Google and asking Google for questions, if you can just include some of those key SEO words, I think that could help them go a very long way. Okay, and that could help you with your content as well. Obviously, SEO is a whole lot more detailed, but I'm just telling you, don't just go, oh, well, I can't SEO, so I'm just going to leave it. And also, if you've got some very key terms, once you've done your research and you know exactly who you're talking to, You can also like go to your website developer and say, okay, so these are some of my key terms that I'm kind of looking for because these are the main pain points. Then he can hopefully, with much hope, include some of that as well on the back end. So to kind of include some of the H1 tags and labeling your images and stuff like that. So yeah, I say it very openly because if you don't have an SEO specific person looking at it, yeah, it can be kind of overwhelming. But I'm just saying, once we've done our exercise that we've done in the foundation, we've got a good idea of what the pain points are. So include some of those in your content because that's what people are looking for. So as I've also said, yeah, then it allows us to label images. So as part of the SEO exercises, any photos that you upload to your website, but your web guy must do this, but ask him. He must label your images because alt tags basically is text for an image because an image is a graphic. So Google can't read graphics, but alt tagging it will give Google an indication of what it's about. So even if your picture is not necessarily about PABX phone lines, if it's relevant to your audience, then make it that, right? So that's why I'm saying if you know some of those very keywords, give it to your web guy and tell him. And then check with him that he's alt tagged all your images. Never mind, made them the correct sizes. Okay, don't ever underestimate or assume. Web developers, always just double check them. Okay, very importantly, obviously, is keeping your content fresh, which we know about. Very difficult to do this, so we suggest the blogging, or then kind of more on the easier side, if you want to just connect, if you are very active on your social feeds, using your social feed to pull that through, which they can just do on your homepage or on your footer, to also just see, Google see it as updated content, because that's all Google wants to see is updated, fresh content. So those are just some ways of how we can manipulate the system if you're not going into your website on a monthly basis and updating your content, which is not likely. So that's why we always say write blogs, because they get uploaded on your site and they get indexed, and we tell Google Console, so immediately Google sees there's new content. And again, if it's relevant, it will drive people to your website, and or you can share obviously the blogs as well across your different channels and drive people to your website to read the blog. So yes, blogs do definitely have a place, and that's why people blog. Or as I said, you could connect your social feed. So just see on your website if you are doing something already to drive fresh content. If not, those are two options to look at. Or you can have somebody going into your website on a monthly basis and pay them, which they do obviously also do. But yeah. Okay, so then number 9, very importantly, is organizing your content and scanning. So I say it's like a story. So we all know Little Red Riding Hood. Okay, so we're not going to land on the Little Red Riding Hood story and see that the wolf was the granny. Like, that's not how it works, right? So we need to think exactly the same when it comes to the content for our audience. So we have to have an intro, we have to have like a kind of a body, and then a conclusion. And the conclusion is definitely like normally the funny, fluffy stuff, you know. So I kind of say that the offering and the testimonials kind of come at the bottom, as much as that's weird. But you need to just position. You need to kind of, you don't want to also get that person on your website and it's like, boom, book now. I don't want to book now. I'm just here to find out how you can help me. So I just always say, remember, going onto a website is like telling a story. You need to unpack it in such a way as well. And even if your offering is lower down, that's okay. Most importantly, you have to resonate with that person that comes onto your website. And if you can resonate with them, guess what? They're going to stay. Okay, but if you kind of bang your offer right at top and they're like, I don't know if this is for me because I don't even know what a PABX phone system is, for example, you're going to lose them. But if you relate to them what their issue is and why they may need one, then he might stick around. Okay, so remember, please, when you do structure, so this is going to be very important for week 4 when you do your homepage activity. You need to break it down into small bite sizes with headers. So like scan reading. University, we used to scan. So we need to like, you know, main headings, subheadings, bullet points, main headings, subheadings, bullets. So people, worst case, if people don't read everything, they can just get the story. So bullets are great as well to simplify, or short paragraphs. And also highlighting words, which is also a nice way to possibly link to other websites, link into inner pages on your website, and or just highlighting words that could stand out for attention. Okay, so it's very important how you structure your content. And this is very important for your homepage as well. Okay, so I don't care too much about the structure of the content on your other pages. Yeah, it's important, but because your homepage is like the front facade of your house, you know, people are going to look at it already and go, this person has got a lot of money and I'm not sure I want to go inside, or whatever it is, you know, we just get that opinion up front just from looking from the outside. Okay, so very important homepage structure. So even when I help clients, I charge them a lot more to do homepage content than inner page content, because homepage takes thinking, strategic, where they're at when they come onto my website with a very specific question. Have I answered it? Have I told them this? Have I told them that? Blah, blah, blah. And then leave the kind of credibility for the bottom. So that's generally why testimonials and all those kind of things start showing up at the bottom. Okay, so that's just to validate. Okay, but it's a nice little story and process. Oh, have you got any questions? Sorry, I'm just going now, Miles.
No, all good.
Okay. Okay, and then number 10, as I've said, include FAQs, as I said in the very, very beginning. It's not a bad place to also help your SEO, and you can like add a page, or even on your homepage at the bottom, you can have a whole lot of different questions, and literally your designer can have the question and then they got to click the button and it drops down. So it doesn't even have to look tacky or untidy on your website, and it helps Google and it will help your client. And just a nice to add. So I'm going to be doing that on my website. That was my key learning from this whole exercise, because I've also seen it come up a lot more. And then obviously you can have a dedicated page just to FAQs as well. Okay. Then using authentic photos and videos. So yeah, it's a bit difficult to sometimes get authentic videos and photos. But depending on your type of business, like for example, we've just started doing a dental practice with a client. We want to take professional photos of the dental practice for a very specific reason. But maybe for like an online marketing business, you know, my practice pictures are not that important, because that's not really where they're going to be. So it just, again, depends on your industry. Are authentic photos relevant? Because if you, for example, if you are servicing clients at a practice, most definitely have photos of your practice on the website, because it's going to show people, oh, that looks so pretty. It looks so child friendly. Look at all those children. Immediately you can associate with it. But obviously, if it's more like a marketing or even IT services business, our front of shop's not that important for our clients. But maybe there is a talk that we were at, and I'm doing a presentation. Maybe those are nice authentic photos for my website, so people can see, okay, she's done a presentation or training in front of other people, or blah, blah, blah. So authentic photos and videos are very good and go a long way, even up to the point of videos. So maybe you want to do a little virtual tour of your practice, or you want to do a virtual tour of your plant. Also had a client that I've been helping he manufactures spices and stuff. You know, kind of showing people your process and like, how does it actually work? Like, where does it start? Where does it end? Very, very good to have some authentic photos and videos. But again, like I said, depends on your industry, because yes, we have got an option to get lots of free pics available online, which make it really easy. But lots of other people are using them too. So just as it says here, pro tip, it is better to have lower quality pictures that are authentic than high quality stock photos. Okay, so just depending where you are at. Okay, number 12 is a no-brainer. We've spoken about this. Responsive meaning must be user-friendly and readable, legible on any mobile device. Okay, no covering of graphics over text or vice versa. And again, your web guy should know, remember, no assumptions, should be able to do that for you. Just double check. And then, of course, it is imperative that you have a secure, trustworthy hosting company to keep the bad guys out and your content up and running. Because essentially, if you're not with a trustworthy hosting company, you'll often find that your emails are down or your website is down. I've had issues like that with a hosting company, and hence I moved from them. But yeah, it can happen. So just generally try and go for someone reputable. And I'll always say, go with someone that you can talk to, because there's nothing worse than trying to go with a hosting company and your website's giving you troubles and you can't get hold of anybody. So go with someone you know that you can pick up the phone or pop an email to or WhatsApp and ask them, what the heck's going on? Why is my website down? Or what's happening? Okay, so that's very, very important, just as an FYI for your website as well. Okay, so there's probably 101 other things to know, but I've summarized these into the 13 key points. I think, as I said, if you can tick every point, your website is going to be great. Easy, right? So the checklist that we've got in summary is, and remember, we'll obviously do this because this will be week 3's activity, is who you are and what you do. Don't be scared to have a photo or a video of yourself and what it is you do. Remember, your domain name is like your brand, so don't try and be too clever. And remember, I've done this too. If you really, really want to have, I've seen it actually, a domain name that people will typically look for from a problem or pain perspective, you can still register more than one domain, and you can just redirect those domains to your main domain. So just by the way, so if you have a bit of like feelings like, shucks, but it's not my exact company name or something, or I want to actually have this because people are always looking for help or whatever it is, you can have more than one domain name. You can just redirect to the main one. Right, Mr. Miles. Okay. Obviously, easy to navigate sitemap is definite. Remember, I want to peruse your website at my leisure. I don't want to have to go and find information. I don't want to look through. I want to be able to scan through your menu and see what I'm interested in reading. I definitely want to be able to connect and get contact info as quickly as possible. I would love to see some customer testimonials, or if it's befores and after pictures, or whatever it is, ratings. I mean, you can have Google review or ratings on your website, whatever it is, just some form of proof that you are actually real and you have given other people the service. Definitely call to actions, never too many, just be strategic, do they flow. Basic SEO, so like I say, when writing your content and just thinking about your headers or your subheaders, do they talk to that very specific client that we've defined? Does it answer their questions? Fresh content, how can we do this? Are we going to blog? Are we going to have our social media feed on our page? Does our content tell a story? And is it nicely written out with bullet points? Possibly including some FAQs. Maybe it's 3 to start. What would those FAQs be? Do we have nice photos and videos? And even if they're not authentic, please, I forgot to mention this. So yes, authentic photos and videos are by far better. But I know they say pro tip is rather have lower res authentic images, but please do not have low res generic images. And please do not go to Google and copy a picture from Google. Okay, very important. And please don't use a picture that's so generic you think you've seen it before, because I've been on a few websites where I'm like, oh my gosh, I've seen this picture. So just an FYI on photos is, if you do not have your own photos and videos and you do want to use generics, please just make sure they are high res images. Please do not use low res images. And please make sure that they are free to use and not Googled. And then, of course, as I've mentioned, just check that your website is responsive and using a trusting company to do your hosting. Okay. Are we clear on what we need to achieve with our websites? Because your website is the window of your business. Keep it fresh, keep it exciting, and also, as you said, Miles, keep it somewhat informative. Okay, because you are still there as the lead or the guide for your clients. All right, so any questions, let me know. Otherwise, next week we will then get on to a live action analysis, and we're going to look at good versus bad and maybe some ugly websites. Cool.
Okay, I can make a plan for the ugly.
And what's that?
No, I can set up my site quickly and do it. Yeah.
You could do that if you want to. You are very welcome to.